bundle. My rap style's boom bap, articulate, never mumble. Disney, Hulu, and Max just announced a bundle on the services websites to where customers will be funneled. Apple TV and Paramount Plus is a bundle. Everyone wants to be the one with the buzz like a bee that bumbles. ESPN, TNT, and Fox are now a bundle. A sports JV that Fubo TV hopes will take a tumble. Disney, Hulu, and ESPN is a bundle. I'm over the top, never below like a trundle. Max launched in France with Canal Plus, it's a bundle. You can catch me in a Parisian bistro or drink a German dunkel. Verizon has Netflix and Max, it's a bundle. This rhyme pattern is getting long like the hair of Rapunzel. But isn't Netflix by itself inherently a bundle? A collection of things wrapped up together that you don't want to fumble. The streaming wars is crazy. Welcome to the jungle. I'm a product of the 80s like Guns N' Roses and Mr. Bungle. Blinded by the light at the end of the tunnel. Zora is through subscriptions or Professor G is to the rundle. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble. Everyone knows that houses built with cards will always crumble. Talk about MAUs.
Hello, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining this Bytesize from Bango. I am Benjamin, your host, and today we're going to be talking about sports streaming, and more specifically, why finding the game you want to watch has become so much harder than it should be. We've just released some new data looking at sports, SVOD. We're looking about FIFA World Cup, which is obviously happening right now, fragmented rights, and also the changes in fan behaviour, such as second screen viewing and this growing use of clips, highlights, and social media. But the big question we'll unpack today is whether sports streaming has an access problem. And to answer that question, I'm going to bring in Giles Tung, who is a regular voice here on the show, and I'm sure we'll dig into a lot of the data we've got here today. Giles, how are you getting on today?
Doing well, Ben. It's about 33 degrees here, so we've got the T-shirt on, but I think it's appropriate for given what we're talking about today. And generally speaking, I'm absolutely buzzing. The World Cup's going great. I had a minute or two in America earlier on, and back here in the UK, soaking it all up. So yeah, in good spirits.
Great. Well, let's get straight into it. And I think I'd just like to say at the start as well, if you've got any questions throughout this, we are live streaming. Please put them into the chat. You can add that into the LinkedIn event, and we can address them at the end. We've got time to address those questions. But yeah, we've got a lot to get into. This is the data that has been launched. Literally, what was it? About 2 weeks ago, Giles? 2 or 3 weeks ago, we launched this. There's an infographic there that's available, and the full data that can be accessed. If you follow the link, and you can scan the QR code that's just above my head and access that data. We've got a lot to get through, so I'm sure we can get right into it. Giles, over to you.
Yeah, so this study we put together just in time for the World Cup, and the headline study data point here is that 64% of respondents, 2,500 in the US, are paying for a sports subscription, video on demand subscription.
So, Giles, you're going to talk a little bit around. You're going to talk a little bit right now about kind of going back in time a little bit. So we've gone back here a 10-year period. How easy and what we had to access to get most sport, basically, major sports.
Yeah, it's really interesting. If you go back about 10 years ago to watch all the major sports, really it meant having a Sky Sports subscription. And then there were various bits of sport in the UK that have to stay on the free-to-air public broadcasting, so BBC, ITV, and Channel 4. But essentially, you could be a sports fan and get all your sports from pretty much one major subscription.
But then fast forward right now to this, where we're at now. A lot more logos.
Right, exactly. So what we're seeing now is a fragmentation of sports rights. So Sky Sports now has most of the football. HBO Max and TNT Sport have some of the football, and we'll come back to that in a second. Amazon Prime Video has some. There's Premier Sports, who've got different sports. The Zone picks up, other bits of the sporting calendar. And we still have some on BBC, ITV, and Channel 4. But the point being is now that sport's getting fragmented, which means as a sports fan, I've now got a lot more considerations on my hands.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk about fragmentation
So,
here. So let's dig into this a little bit. What that actually means, right? What are the decision What are the decision processes that are going through a fan's head?
yeah, so what's happened now is that instead of being a sports fan and I've got Sky Sports, I'm now having to force myself to make a lot of choices and decisions. So, am I a sports fan? Does such a thing even exist? Someone who's just into sports and they're going to pay to watch sports? Or am I a football fan? Or am I a rugby fan? Because that may be somewhere else and I might need a different subscription for that. And if I am a football fan, am I a Premier League fan? Am I a Champions League fan? Or am I really a fan of a particular team? And now I'm going to follow that team around different aspects. Or am I a fan of a team in football and a team in rugby? And what does that mean for the different subscriptions and streaming services I might need? So the fragmentation of sport has led to this minefield of decision trees and a consideration really of just how dedicated really am I? Am I a casual fan and I'll watch whatever I can get because I happen to be subscribed to something and I happen to get the occasional game, or I'll wait for Match of the Day on the BBC, the highlights package that's on free to air or funded by the TV license, or am I going to really start investing in Sky Sports and other services? So it's really interesting when you think about it. The fragmentation of sport has really led to quite a lot of decision making on behalf of the sports fan that perhaps isn't obvious at a glance until you start thinking about it.
And yes, we definitely started to think about, haven't we, since we were doing this research. So yeah, do you want to talk about some of these stats that are in here, Giles, around subscribing to?
So with this in mind, this fragmentation of sports and, now the sports and different sports are fragmented in different channels, different competitions within sports are fragmented on different channels. It really got me thinking, and this is, the question we asked here was a reflection of this thought process, is why are people actually subscribing? If the notion of a sports fan per se doesn't really marry up with the fragmented media rights that we have now, why are people subscribing? So we asked a bunch of questions here. So 15% subscribe for live sports in general. So there's the answer to that question is there a sports fan? Well, 15% are subscribing to sports in general. 15% are subscribing for one sport. 29% are subscribing for a particular league, tournament, or event. 28% are subscribing to follow a specific team. And 13% are mainly subscribing for one sport, but they're actually staying subscribed because there are other sports included, which is kind of related to the first two data points there. But if you think about the implications then as to why behaviorally am I even thinking about subscribing to something, what does it now require for me to subscribe to follow a league? Or what do I need to subscribe to follow a team? And that's kind of the cognitive load that we're putting on sports fans now, just simply from a figuring it all out point of view.
And I think, you've got a great example here as well to talk through as a fan yourself, right? A Nottingham Forest fan, which is quite unfortunate, I must say. But it's, what you actually need to subscribe to watch all the games, right? So do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, for sure. So I had a look at this, and this really came to mind as Forest had a kind of difficult time in the Premier League, but had the best season we've ever had in one of the European competitions, or at least the best season for 40 years. And you'll see how this is played out in my case study here. So my team is Nottingham Forest. We play in the Premier League. To access the Premier League, you would need a subscription to Sky Sports. Some games are on Prime Video and some games are on TNT Sport. So in theory, to follow all the games, you would take all of those subscriptions. In practice, I didn't do that. I took Now TV on weekend passes, or I'd go and watch the game in the pub or with friends or whatever. So I didn't take a Sky Sports subscription, but I would take the occasional 24-hour pass of Sky Sports through Now TV. Prime Video I have for a legion of other reasons, not delivery and otherwise, e-commerce side. So I have Prime Video kind of anyway. And TNT Sports was one I didn't consider at this point. So I wasn't going to take it for the Premier League. But what happens next is we start to progress in the Europa League. In fact, we get to the semi-finals. And at this point, I start to break. It's £30 a month thereabouts for TNT Sports. So I have HBO Max and then £30 for TNT Sports. And at that point, we're in the semi-finals, and we haven't been there in 30, 40 years. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the subscription. So what ends up happening is I take the subscription for a month, which gives me access to 2 games, because then we're knocked out. And actually, mentally, that made it feel like a kind of pay-per-view sort of experience, a bit like the Now TV, rather than really a subscription. Because as soon as we were kicked out, I cancelled the subscription. But nonetheless, I'm just sharing my thought process in what happens here. And then for the rest of the competitions, we've got the FA Cup on TNT Sports and the BBC, Carabao Cup on Sky Sports and ITV. So I didn't really touch those except for when they were on the free-to-air channels. So net, what does that mean? I need 3 subscriptions, a TV license, and access to 5 services if I want to follow my team through this journey of competitions. So that's the perspective for me as a fan of a team, following my team across all of these competitions here in the UK.
I've got a different perspective as well. So I did a bit of a, in our internal kind of Slack message, trying to different people, try to understand who's sports fans and who they look after and who they kind of follow and so on. And I came across Samuel, who's based over in San Jose on the West Coast, and he is a San Francisco 49ers fan. And we did the same exercise, right? Went through what he needs to subscribe to access every single game. So Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, all the different other games and different competitions and so on. And this is kind of what his monthly costs look like. So probably similar to you, Giles, in when you start tallying up all those different ones that you're in there. But I'd probably say it's even worse in the US, right? The kind of fragmentation is pretty rife. So YouTube TV, which is quite a hefty one. NFL Sunday Ticket, which is usually watched through YouTube. You can buy a season pass, or there's a monthly kind of cost there. Peacock, Amazon Prime, I think it's Thursday Night Football. Correct me if I'm wrong. ESPN Plus and NFL Plus Premium. So some of them are actually the lower tiers as well of some of these that you have more tiers involved in those that you can go. So instead of the Select for ESPN, you could be the Premier one and so on. But it's still coming out at just over $200 a month to watch the 49ers, right? So you can access the full in here as well. There's a QR code that's just come up as well above my head, which is the full blog to access.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Ben, Netflix picked up a couple of Christmas games, I think, perhaps since we did that survey. So, even more fragmentation there in the US on the NFL.
Very true, very true. And we wanted to kind of get a bit more of a macro view on fragmentation, and this is just some observations that have been made from eMarketer. And it looked at a 10-year period, this kind of 2018 that exists, so a bit of a future look by 2028. And look at this kind of share of time spent, right, of watching sports, right? This kind of where traditional was completely the owner of this area, now moving more into that kind of digital, taking kind of a little bit of that market share of kind of the viewing time. So that's as an indication there of a quite a seismic shift happening, where the streamers are having a bigger play in that space. And similarly with the kind of sports rights, this is just again some more data here looking at the different leagues and the different sports, and then the services that they can be watched on, right? And they'll spread, and it seems to be getting, the spider web is growing, right, year on year. So it's really interesting to see these number of partnerships that are coming online and how to access them. And I think the interesting part here is those black lines on this one are solely streaming providers. So away from that kind of that linear TV and focusing on those kind of the Netflix and Prime Video, which is through a subscription. I thought this was interesting to bring in as well, Giles, because it kind of really highlights the dismay that exists, right, with sports fans. So Daphne Moore here was saying, "Dear NFL, I'm tired of all these dang streaming platforms. I just want to watch a football game. Enough's enough. We shouldn't be chasing subscriptions like a scavenger hunt. This whole trying to find where it is and where to watch. We've got data on that, haven't we? But you shouldn't be limiting who can watch it, right? That's what they're saying. We should be able to enable this and have that easier access. Be more inclusive." Another one here, Harvey, saying that this is in reply to someone saying about Sky Sports, TNT, and Amazon Prime, which you literally talked about before, Giles. That aggregated cost is coming up to £900 a year. And this person's saying my season ticket costs half that. I mean, like you said before, it probably is it's not a top tier Premier League team, because that would be a lot more than 450 quid for a season ticket. And then similarly over in the US, right? So someone here saying I'm spending nearly 1.5K on to watch all the games on all these different platforms. So it's really pointing to an issue, and they're calling to NFL to fix this ASAP. So it really is highlighting a problem that fans are experiencing, and they really need a solution to solve for this. So there's two areas here, isn't there, Giles? Two kind of bits that are coming from this.
Yeah, this fragmentation is really manifesting itself in two big issues. One is the cognitive load, the mental effort of trying to understand where the games are going to be shown and which services I need, and when and where's the game on, and have I got the subscription? Am I still subscribed? Did I cancel it? Whatever. So this huge mental load on sports fans trying to just watch the game. I mean, look at those NFL, different channels showing NFL. That is a lot to manage. And then, of course, the financial cost. Now you've got to subscribe to all of these different services to watch the game. So it's really a lot of burden that's being placed on sports fans. And of all the subscription categories that we follow, it is the sports fans who carry the heaviest burden, thanks to the fragmentation of sports rights. Yeah. So if we look at the data here that we got in the survey, 46% of those surveys had missed a game because they couldn't find out where it was streaming. So nothing to do with cost. That's just I couldn't find it. And the same number missed part of a game. They couldn't find out where it was streaming. And I've definitely done that. I've definitely come into the office the next day and somebody said, "Oh, did you watch the Champions League? It was on Prime last night." "Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't even know it was on." And that was one I'd already paid for. How frustrating is that? And then the financial costs. 27% need at least 3 paid subscriptions to watch all the live sports they want to follow. Now, if you remember back, I was 3 subscriptions, but that was just football we were talking about. Yeah. I have interest in other sports, right? So maybe there's more for rugby and other things, So 77% of 25 to 34-year-olds pay for multiple subscriptions just to follow all the sports they want to watch. And 32% regularly subscribe for a single season and then cancel once it ends. And this is pretty typical behavior. And we see that in other types of subscription services, the kind of pause and resume mentality. And it's certainly the case in sports, where people are paying a lot of money to watch a lot of different sports and a lot of different competitions. And if you remember my example, the second that Forest were kicked out of Europe, I cancelled that TNT sports subscription. Yeah, so one potential solution here is what we call in the UK the dodgy stick, which is piracy. So people are turning to piracy. Why? Because it solves both of those problems, albeit illegally. So with the dodgy stick, people are able to watch, I'm told, sports from around the world on whatever channel that the pirate provider has found. And typically people are able to watch the big game wherever it is, whenever it is. And by the way, in the UK, that includes sometimes watching the 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff, which is absolutely forbidden. That's within a kind of blackout time period. So the only way to actually watch that 3 p.m. game is illegally through piracy. So it can't really be a surprise, given how hard and expensive it is to be a sports fan, or a football fan is mostly what they've referred to in some of these stats. That 30% are turning to piracy. So 30% are paying. 30% are turning to piracy to watch all the sports that they want. And this is US data, remember. We did do a survey previously in the UK, and the number was pretty much the same.
Yeah. I think they are clamping down on this a lot and trying their best to do this. And you see things happening all the time, and making sure that it's really clamped down. But it's still quite prolific, right? They're having 30% is still a huge number.
It's huge. It's illegal too. People should not be doing this, but it's offsetting this cognitive load and financial load that's being placed on the sports fan. So it's not entirely to be surprising, I think.
So, as you said, you've got an England shirt on, Giles. Obviously, the World Cup is in full flight.
Yes.
We've got some data on the World Cup. Do you want to talk us through this one?
Yeah. So this was again, it's data from the US. So 41% of people in the survey, which was general population, didn't know where they could watch the World Cup. Now, the World Cup is one tournament. It's not like the football we've previously described with different competitions going on. This is one tournament. Now, in the US, the Fox Sports had the rights to the English language version, and they were putting that out on the Fox Sports network, on Fox One, the subscription video on demand. So take a subscription to that, you can access the Fox network. And also some games were put out on Tubi. There was also a Spanish language broadcast, and that was taken by Telemundo. So that was on the Telemundo channels, but also within Peacock. So not massively overwhelming, but considering it's one sports competition, there's a lot of options there, and it's obviously creating some confusion. And this was a survey done right up in the lead up to the World Cup. So the marketing was already well underway. So pretty interesting that not quite half didn't know where they could watch the World Cup. And that's typical of the problem we have in sports.
Bit of a branding problem, really, as well, I'd probably say, for the brands that are trying to do it, right?
Yeah.
However, obviously, there was some staggering results, right, from the viewership, right? Even though that this 41% didn't know where to watch it, right?
Yeah, it's been a record-breaking World Cup from many, many points of view. Record attendance in the stadium, smashing the previous World Cup, which happened to also be it was USA '94. But on the TV and from the perspective we're looking at things here, over 40 million Americans watched the USA versus Belgium game. That number's still being verified, and in fact, it might even go up. And the estimate so far is that 30 million viewers watched through the Fox Sports network in the English language, and 12 million watched the Spanish language version. So the biggest ever TV audience for a soccer game in the US. And over in the UK, we had the biggest ever, or the biggest audience since 2024, watching England versus the Democratic Republic of Congo. 16.3 million watched there through the BBC and BBC iPlayer. And on the iPlayer, of course, it's on demand, but they're also streaming in Ultra HD, which is pretty eye-popping quality if you get a chance to do that. And in both countries, the sports rights, I already mentioned in the US that Tubi have some of the games. And in the UK, we're splitting the World Cup between the BBC and ITV, both free to air. BBC funded by the TV license and ITV funded by ads, so AVOD. There is an option within ITV to pay to remove some of the ads. I don't think all of them in sports, but even there we've got this fragmentation issue of two channels have it. You don't know where the game's going to be. It's following us around, this fragmentation. But perhaps even more exciting is in South America and Brazil, this absolute breakthrough moment when it comes to sports broadcasting with Case TV. So this is a creator who has his own YouTube channel, Case TV. And they did some experiments and got some rights in the Qatar World Cup that went very, very well, and secured rights to all of the games in Brazil for the World Cup. And they've been broadcasting every game there through their YouTube channel, which is kind of very unusual. And they've been smashing YouTube viewership records. So Brazil versus Japan had 21 million live concurrent viewers. And, there's some debate around the accuracy of the 21 million. It doesn't really matter. It's one, it's a record, and two, it's an enormous number if it's anywhere near that. So this is a really interesting business model, which is putting live broadcast sports through YouTube, which is ad funded, of course, and out of broadcasters' hands. So it's really adding another dimension to this melting pot of who owns sports rights and the kind of fragmentation of sports. And the sister company of Case TV, Live Mode TV, did a similar thing in Portugal. They've secured a few of the World Cup rights. They actually took an investment with Ronaldo, who's a contender for greatest of all time football player and the world's number one influencer. And they've been showing games there on YouTube as well. So really interesting developments in the world of sports and sports rights, which may solve or may confuse further the fragmentation. But I think we'll see in a minute why this is such an interesting move.
Yeah, and I think YouTube, obviously, I'd say the average person watching the YouTube, and I'm not all the stats to completely back this up, but it is a younger demographic that uses this, right? I mean, your kids are on YouTube quite a lot, aren't they, Giles? And I think I know.
Yeah.
Young
Well,
kids
something that came out this week, Evan Shapiro released an index which will help answer that question. Where are people spending their attention? Where are you putting your eyeballs? And he was showing very clearly that YouTube is now the most watched, or has the highest level of attention, and it's even more so in the younger generation. So YouTube absolutely is the place to be. No surprise that FIFA wants the World Cup to be there. And in our study, we asked some interesting questions around the viewership of sport and how that's evolving. And one of the trends that we spotted here, and the question was answered 46% general population and higher for the younger generation, is that people are following sports through clips, updates, and social media instead of watching full games, which is really fascinating. So nearly 2/3 of 18 to 24-year-olds are now watching clips instead of the full game. And to sort of compound that, roughly the same number, or 58%, exactly the same number, are second screening when they are watching live sports. So really interesting diversion of attention, even when watching a live sport. And we've got a bit of an interesting story that sort of parallels this.
We do, yeah. It's from BBC, right?
Yeah, so this World Cup has meant there's been some unusual kickoff times for European-based watchers. The England versus Mexico game, scheduled as a 1 a.m. start, actually started at 2 a.m. So quite remarkable, really, that 9 million people stayed up to watch it live. It's the most watched sport at 2 a.m. In the UK ever. I don't know what it's up against, perhaps some Olympic fencing or something. So it's the most watched sport at 2 a.m. with 9 million viewers. Another million watched it as a rerun. So now we're thinking of a trend of people watching on demand. The highlights were streamed 5.9 million times on iPlayer, BBC Sport website, and on the BBC Football YouTube channel, which is very high. Evidenced here, BBC Sport website and app had 15 million unique visitors, making it the biggest day ever. And similarly, the sports social platform had 330 million views, making it the biggest day ever. So while we have this unusual kickoff at 2 a.m., and of course that's the main driver of these numbers, I think this underlying trend that we're watching of people not watching the full game, rather wanting to catch up and watch clips and highlights and do so through social media, is also evident within this really breakthrough moment here.
Yes, I mean, this is all pointing to one big issue, right, of this fragmentation of sports rights and so on, and this kind of problem of trying to where to watch and how to watch it, and the expense that goes with it, right? So what's the solution here, Giles? How can we get over this?
So what we have now is this cognitive load being placed on sports fans, driven by the fragmentation of sports. You're having to subscribe to multiple different channels, over 3 different subscription services, maybe other streaming services, to watch all the sport that you want. And there's a huge cost burden that's going with this. And what our survey is telling us, that 50% want one app for all the sports they want, all the sports they want to watch. So they want this consolidated in one place. So 50% want one app for all the sports they want to watch. And that rises to 56% of Gen Z. So fans are crying out for some consolidation, and it's not just cost, it's the mental load, it's the cognitive load of needing spreadsheets to remember where they've subscribed and what they've subscribed to, and an interactive diary to know where the game's going to be. It's getting too much, and people need help with consolidation to overcome this kind of subscription fatigue. And really interesting where the solution could come from. So 52% trust their operator to bring together all their live sports into one bundle. 53% would rather get them through their telco than manage individual subscriptions, versus 24% from any one streaming service. So clearly they're looking for the telco to help them with this, or mobile operator. Operator, pay TV, broadband provider in that definition of telco. 46% say a sports streaming bundle would make them more loyal to their current provider. So there's a retention benefit if this service is provided. And 49% would be more likely to recommend a provider offering a strong sports package. So really interesting evidence there, saying that providing this is going to be a good thing for the subscriber and for your business. And it's more evidenced here. 43% would switch mobile, broadband, or TV provider for a better sports streaming bundle. 44% say sports streaming is an important factor in choosing provider. 48% would consider switching if they lost access to the sports that they care about. And 42% would pay more if their telco included sports that they care about. So really, this is really a lot of evidence here saying sports is a very big driver of consumer behavior. There's a big problem here with subscription fatigue and the fragmentation of sports leading to a heavy cognitive load and a heavy financial load. But if operators solve this problem for them, people will switch to them. They will even pay more and be more loyal to that service that gives them the consolidation of sports to ease the financial and cognitive load placed on them through the fragmentation of sports.
Yeah, I think with from all whenever there's a risk, there's always an opportunity, another side to it, right? And this is kind of what that's pointing to. There might be opportunity here for an operator to consolidate them and solve that problem, and actually probably steal some market share potentially from those in their competitors. So you were actually at Stream TV, weren't you, back in last month in June, and you had a panel with some esteemed guests. Do you want to talk us through who was on that panel?
Yeah, this was brilliant. So Evan Shapiro's Media Universe Summit, and he asked me to pull together a panel and moderate it on the new bundles. So we're exploring what bundling could look like in the future. And on that panel, we had Ethan from Paramount, Matt from LG, Scott from Charter, and Stephanie from DirecTV. And they were sharing insights on the future of bundling. And Stephanie, I asked particularly about the effect of World Cup on DirecTV, and they provide the genre packs, and you'll hear Stephanie talk about it.
Has the World Cup football, the round one, had any effect on the business?
Oh, yeah, it has. It's been phenomenal. I mean, that's a big part of our ecosystem, right? Helping you find the content you want very quickly and getting you right there. And so we have these fantastic sports hubs that we've created, and it puts World Cup front and center. We're also seeing probably our best ever inflow numbers on our Mi Español package. So that Spanish language World Cup content is really, really popular.
So really, really big success there with the genre packs they were offering, particularly as relates to the World Cup and the Mi Español pack, which is including Telemundo, which I mentioned before carries the World Cup in Spanish.
So this is really kind of pointing towards a win-win-win situation, right? In by using bundling as that kind of glue for all these different parties to succeed and have the best outcomes. So for the operators, right, it's great for them because there's an acquisition, as we talked about before, and a chance to bring new customers in, but also to retain customers as well. Making something that's compelling enough for them to stay with you, for have that extra long-term value. It's also great for the brands that are investing in sport, right? Because they can get into new audiences. Some of these kind of operators have got huge customer bases, and there's a great way to tap into those audiences for those brands that are investing so heavily in sport as well for the rights, as we talked about before. And then for fans like you and I, right, it solves for those subscription fatigue moments, right? That mental load. Where do I watch it? How do I watch it? How do I find where I need to go? And then the financial burdens we touched on before, like, hundreds of dollars spending on these areas, and there's an opportunity there to kind of aggregate them into that one place, that one app, that one ecosystem to connect to all those sports that people love and want to watch. Giles, you saw some new data, right, from Omdia. There's literally just been released, right? And we thought we'd put this in here.
Yeah, we came across this earlier today, so I thought I'd include it because it's quite a big story, really. So this is one slide that was shared on LinkedIn earlier on, which I grabbed. It's relating back to some survey work that they appear to have done around April this year. And what it's showing is the increase in bundling. 50% or over 50% of SVOD subscriptions are taken via bundling channels in selected markets, and the markets they're referring to are US, EU3, and Korea. So big subscription markets here. So this is absolutely fascinating. It's really showing how the subscription brands are leaning into bundling and indirect distribution to grow their sales. And here they're showing the direct versus mobile and broadband, any commerce deals, add-ons, pay TV, anything via the device, banking, and the use of vouchers. So it's really interesting how quickly bundling is becoming a major service. And we've seen data in the past from Antenna, for example, showing that for speciality SVOD, in some cases, all of the subscriptions are coming through indirect distribution, and the average I saw was 91%. So there's a real swing towards indirect distribution, and anyone building a subscription program these days really should be thinking of distribution from day one, as was the case with Fox One, where they launched with multiple channels, including Verizon as a telco when they launched. So really interesting data that I thought we'd just squeeze in here, because it really speaks to what we've been talking about all along, how bundling can help subscription brands grow. And in the case of sports, we can help consolidate different services into one place, which is going to overcome the subscription fatigue, which is both a mental load and a financial load, and is no more exacerbated than in sport.
Yeah, and I think what we do at Bango, right? We're here. We have the digital vending machine that solves for this and can be used to solve this problem, right? Working with us. So we see three key real points here around kind of bringing those subscriptions together into one compelling package. This is kind of sports, entertainment, other digital services. We're seeing that this is a simpler way to solve for this fragmentation, this fatigue that exists, right? Making it simpler and easier to access. Mentioned there about simplifying the customer experience, right? Trying to find where to look. I mean, if you log into that one app and then it's all there, ready to go, and you literally just get going and watching. How easy would life be if that was your user experience? And then that simplicity actually then turns into growth, right? Using our product, because we can then test new models out, test new kind of different bundles, different kind of unique propositions, right? And really differentiate yourself within the market. And that's what then you see that kind of hockey stick growth from using our product. Right, Giles, we're going to go into the Q&A. I think if we've got some people live on our audience, I'm sure there'll be some questions hopefully that come through. But yeah, what's first of all, I'm going to ask you, what's your prediction of the World Cup? I can't not do this at this time, right? What's your prediction for the England game? And also, who do you think is actually going to win the World Cup?
Well, I think England have got Norway next. We know all about Haaland and Odegaard, and some of the other players like Berger have been sort of surprising because they've been around the English game a while. We have the defender at Brentford. So apart from a couple of standout players, they have good players. But, you like to do this sort of mental comparison. Who in their team would get in our team? Not that many. Haaland, probably, but he's got to dislodge Kane. So even that's not completely straightforward. So I'd like to think we got a good chance against Norway. I think the overall winner, though, France have looked exceptional.
Yeah, I had in my head France or Spain, but I think after seeing them play, I think I'm leaning more into France as well, to be honest with you. But also in my heart, I'm thinking maybe England can get there. Maybe. Yeah, so there's been a few kind of comments, I'd say, and questions that have come up. Some kind of statements here. So there's one here saying about what happens if you wanted to follow multiple sports, right? Rugby, F1. World Superbikes, it just gets ridiculous, right? And that's kind of what we were alluding to, weren't we, Giles, before?
I think that this is the point, is that the idea of being a sports fan and being able to watch all the sports that you want is kind of becoming a real financial problem, because if you're just into football's being fragmented across multiple channels, which is very expensive. But people tend to be fans of more than one sport often. So, if you're also into rugby, then there might be another subscription there. If you're into Superbike, I have no idea where Superbikes are now, but, perhaps there's another subscription for that, or into MMA, there's another thing, or NFL or whatever, so it's getting very hard to follow this. Sadly, the genie's out the bottle. I don't think we go back to, I've got Sky Sports, so I've got everything. I think that's in the past. So, it's difficult.
And I think the same user actually has also said, it's quite funny, this subscriptions have come like Pokemon, you've got to catch them all, which is, it's true. I mean, and this, we were just talking about sports right here, right? And, you think a lot broader to, music, lifestyle, health and fitness, any of those sort of education. It just becomes an absolute minefield, right, of just choice and probably overwhelmed of choice. And it's just consolidation.
Subscriptions have become a very popular business model, and rightfully so. They're great for businesses. They're great for subscribers. I still can't believe that you can watch the entirety of the HBO catalogue for £4.99 a month. I mean, if I think back to perhaps when I was a student, I might buy Band of Brothers as a box set for £15 or £20. That's 4 months worth of not just Band of Brothers, but everything else. So in actual fact, subscriptions and the way the SVODs are developing and rolling out, you can get incredible value from it. But if, like me, you then end up with 20 subscriptions, add in AI, add in gaming, productivity, stuff around the house, you then end up with a ton of subscriptions, and managing all of that is quite tricky and overwhelming. So it's not just sports. That's a high demand. It's a category which people want to watch there and then. So it's very important to people's lives. It's tribal. There's a lot of factors involved in sports, but subscriptions generally touch all parts of our lives.
Thank you, Giles. Yeah, a few other bits saying France is winning. Nice comment there. I think some people are agreeing. Marta was actually saying that it will be even bigger against Norway. I imagine that's alluding to the kind of the stats that you showed.
It will be, and that's a 10 p.m. kickoff, right? So that's not out of reach for families to watch that. The big game, DR Congo, I can't remember what time of day that was. I think that was an evening game as well. But 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, yeah, I think people will be watching that. So that could be a record breaker.
And then another comment here from Alison saying, I watch F1 Academy live, both on YouTube and on X. So that's, again, another interesting, two channels to watch different sports. So I think that's an interesting comment.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, there was the Endeavour games, the enhanced games, which were if you remember, it was the games where athletes had relaxed rules around what they could, supplements and otherwise that they could take, different sports equipment and so forth. So it created this really intriguing environment, which was, could an athlete taking extra supplements, steroids and other things, I think, plus different types of equipment. So in the swimming pool, for example, they were using a swimwear that wasn't allowed in conventional competitions. And what would happen? And I was wondering, why haven't Netflix or others got involved in that? And probably it was a little bit, it was on the edge, right? It was a bit of a perhaps controversial, something could go wrong. It was a bit unknown. So I understood that. But then when I saw it rolling out and saw them getting, a couple of million people watching around the world on YouTube, it occurred to me, actually, that could be quite a smart move, because now you've lowered the barrier to watching. You've lowered the entry point. I can essentially watch this thing for free.
Yeah.
And to a global audience. And you think, wow, isn't YouTube an amazing platform from that perspective? And of course, you can pay premium to remove ads when you're watching stuff. So it's really interesting how sports can find audiences in so many different channels.
A question coming from Beth Giles, one for you to pick up here. So, do you think teams and leagues will begin to lose fans because they simply can't afford to subscribe to everything to keep up with all the games, or just annoyed by all this? The pendulum could swing back the other way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems anti-fan, doesn't it, to force them out the market? And the same could be said for ticket prices on the field. Like I mentioned, I was in America a couple of weeks ago, and because of all the scare stories about ticket prices for the events, in the end, I didn't even bother trying to see if I could get into a game. It seemed like you had to be in a waiting list and then be approved. And then, somebody told me the other day that the day before Saudi Arabia against Uruguay, the ticket price was $800. I mean, that's a lot of money to go and see Saudi Arabia against Uruguay. So the ticket price in the stadium is getting a bit crazy. But the proliferation of all of these different rights over different channels is making it really hard, both the mental and the financial side. Could it put off fans? Yeah, absolutely it could. If I can't watch all the sport that I want, then I'm doing something else with my time. So that is eroding those moments where I should be watching my team. In some countries, the World Cup isn't on free to air. So you have to pay for a subscription to watch it. Not everyone will be able to afford that subscription in that moment. So that's driving a wedge, putting up a barrier between the fans and the sport. So inevitably, it's going to erode fans' trust. And those two examples we saw of NFL fans were horrifying. One of them seemed to need 8 different services to follow NFL. logistics aside, that's very, very expensive. So that's going to erode, your desire to watch every game, which will have a negative effect on fandom for sure.
Excellent. Well, I think we can draw it to a close. Giles, thank you very much for your time and expertise in this subject matter. A reminder again to download the stats and have a look. You can access them from the QR codes that will be shared throughout the piece. If you want to get in touch with myself or Giles or anyone from our team, the contact us is also up in the top right hand corner as well. But yeah, we'll be back for another bite size at the end of this month into early next month. And if we don't hear from you, all the best for the rest of the World Cup. Enjoy it, Giles, and we'll speak to you very soon, I'm sure.
Yep, thanks a lot, Ben. Good job. And thanks, everyone, for coming and for hanging around and asking the questions. See you next time.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.